We have done a couple of things in terms of sustainability rating criteria. We have committed to LEED and D. LEED, I'm sure you're familiar with LEED, and LEED is developing a program that is not for individual buildings but for neighborhood developments, LEED for neighborhood developments. They haven't completed that rating system yet, so we're not exactly sure what that's going to look like. We would like to achieve a platinum level, but not knowing where that's going to end up. We're confident that we'll get to a gold. One of the things that we did decide to do, however, was rather than requiring every single building, we wanted every single building to be built to green building standards, but it was less important to us that each one gets commissioned and certified. We wanted that cost and time to actually be invested in the bricks and mortars, the elements that you would see there. So we worked with our Department of the Environment. We tailored the LEED green building specifications to develop our own, prioritizing the things that were most important to us, such as protecting the bay, energy usage, that sort of thing. They're LEED Gold equivalent, but it's something that we departed from some other, what is being done elsewhere. I'm not going to go through each of these, but suffice it to say that probably we have the bones in place for, I will be a little optimistic and boastful here. Our goal is to be the most sustainable development project in the U.S. We're not exactly sure who our competition is. It may in fact be your project. One of the things that we can really advance and requires partnerships that we haven't yet identified is through the renewable energy generation on the island. That could be through our Public Utilities Commission. It could be through third-party private investors. The Parks and Recreation, again, is both an amenity and an element of the sustainability program. Of the 450 acres that we'll receive from the Navy, 300 will be parks and open space. We recognize that that could be that it is a tremendous opportunity, but if you have dead open space, it becomes a major liability for the success of the project. And so we have broken the open space into different elements, different programs of active and passive uses, more natural and more hardscape. And I'll walk through some of the key ones. A major component of the open space program are a more wooded environment on Yerba Buena Island, which is already like that. That will be retained. We'll improve the trails, and we'll implement a habitat management plan. And then we'll actually take the northern side of the island and turn it into, if you've been to Crissy Field in San Francisco, that's a good comparable. I don't have a slide that shows the existing conditions today, but this is a last phase because former Navy housing, which is actually occupied and leased to anybody through a management company, actually occupies sort of the bottom half of that open space. One of the interesting things that we have the opportunity to do, something that's hard to do in cities where land values are high and land is scarce, but because we have 300 acres of open space, we actually have the opportunity to try out creating an organic farm. That could be, there's a good possibility that could be in, blanking on the word for greenhouses. One of our development partners is the entity that did the renovation of the ferry building. They have relationships with the organic farming community, and they've actually gone out and talked to them, and there's a lot of interest actually. Whether it would be a money-making venture, there's no expectation on the part of the city that's going to be generating revenues. It's simply a use that's complementary to the overall program. Housing, again, goes without saying, badly needed. The housing is really, and I don't know if this is true of your project as well, but of the 6,000 units, 30% are affordable in this project, and the 4,200 market rate units are basically what pay for all of the new infrastructure all of the amenities that we're talking about here. Treasure Island isn't really big enough to be more than one neighborhood, but we do have sort of distinct districts of residential. Yerba Buena Island on the right is more natural, lower density, only about 200 units, and then the bulk of the 6,000 units are in two districts that are flanking the Job Corps. As I mentioned, 30% affordable. We think about the affordable program in separate categories with the goal of providing a range of affordable income levels. We have, as I believe you all have, a partnership with a homeless housing coalition. Ours is called the Treasure Island Homeless Development Initiative. They currently occupy about 250 units of the 850 that exist on the island today, and they will have about 450 as part of the future development plan. There's then a bulk of units that we refer to as agency units. They're traditionally a redevelopment agency will take the land, they'll issue an RFP for nonprofit builders like Bridge or Eden Housing to come in and build in the 30 to 80% of median income range. And then we have inclusionary housing units, which is when a private developer builds a market rate building, 15% of those units are required to be provided at below market rates, and that's sort of the working middle income in the 60 to 100, maybe even up to 120, 150% of median income. The community benefits I'm not going to go into in detail. Needless to say, it's job creation through the retail, the hotels, partnerships with the Treasure Island Homeless Development Initiative to try and target jobs to those folks, and then obviously public infrastructure like a police station, fire station, community spaces. Infrastructure, you all know this story. It basically requires an entirely new infrastructure system. At Treasure Island, that means also reinforcing the entire perimeter of the island seismically, as well as all of the areas where there's development. They basically are going to, this is not a technical description, they're basically going to create a pancake out of the sand, which is the island was created by fill, and the buildings will sit on top of it. The taller buildings will obviously have to be on piles. All of the wet and dry utility systems have to be entirely replaced, as well as, in our case, some connections off the island, since the water comes from San Francisco, electricity comes from the East Bay. This is the development budget for just the horizontal development, that preparing the land, building the infrastructure. It's about $1.2 billion. That's probably a couple of years old. This does not include the cost of building the individual buildings. If you add that in, it's probably a $5 to $6 billion total project. And then our time frame is we're hoping to complete our environmental review and approvals by the middle of 2010, and then the build out of the project is, as we've seen at Mission Bay and other large redevelopment projects around the Bay Area, it's a 10 to 15 year time frame, obviously depending on where the economy is. And this all is predicated on actually transferring the property. So we've been working very closely with the Alameda folks and on that for several years. That's the end of the presentation, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions?